There are bees on my balls. Did I win? Did I win it? Bees on my balls. It's like a horror movie.
You know what that reminds me of?
Around. What?
I guess it shouldn't remind me of anything.
Uh-huh.
But you were too old for Phineas and Ferb, huh?
Hey, shut the fuck up. What are you talking about? Bitch, what do you mean? I just didn't watch that channel.
That's what I'm saying.
I just didn't watch the channel. Yu-Gi-Oh!
So anyway, Phineas and Ferb had this song. It was called Squirrels in My Pants.
And what was that song about?
Have you ever heard it?
You cannot play that song.
No, I'm gonna find.
You cannot play.
I can play clips. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Put your headphones on.
I won't need them, please. Just play it. I got it. Skit and stop.
Squirrels in my pants. S-I-M-P, squirrels in my pants.
Get this off of my computer.
Anyway, you said you had bees on your balls and it made me think of squirrels in my pants.
I'll make a song for it later.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of fun facts from ZeFrank, going from shit slurries to how butterflies fly.
Will you ever let the shit slurry go?
It was the most horrifying thing I've ever learned in my entire life that I should have known. And I'll never let him forget that he taught it to me. So now we got bees that play with balls. And so we have all kinds of fetishes kind of wrapped into one. You really can take your pick with this guy. Nothing is too far for him to handle. Check out Casual Geographic on my wife's channel. Also, we both did a daily dose of internet today that you'll definitely want to see. It's full of funsies. Here we go.
This episode sponsored by Brilliant.
I'm
Learn
brilliant.
to think. If you've ever seen a bee, you've probably noticed that they're not the largest of animals, and thusly are endowed with a brain suitable for their smallnessness. Here it is, the brain of a bee.
Huh.
I mean, honestly, it looks fairly large on the screen like that.
There's no ripples.
It looks big. What are you talking about? It's a ripple right there.
Wow.
And right here.
That's what we call smooth brain.
No, look, he got all kinds of ripples.
That's probably how Jeff's brain looks. Just base desire.
Why you do Jeff
It's
like
just
that?
base desire, no critical thinking, just what I want.
Did he not text you back last week?
He didn't, actually. It's not related to that. Fucking text me back, loser.
But this Xbox controller, which is apparently what controls a bee, only has around 960,000 neurons in it. Compare that to the 100 billion or so neurons in a human brain.
Got
You
it.
see that right there? No? Well, that's the bee brain to scale. Anyway, with stats like that, you might expect a bee to suck at Scrabble, which they do. But they can remember the directions to a flower a mile away. I'm sure I could do that.
I couldn't.
And they can learn which flowers have the good sauce. This bee right here, for example, learned that those yellow third-grade arts and crafts flowers had the better nectar to drink, while the blue ones had the better pollen to rub all over. It's the best day of that pipe cleaner's life. I know what you're thinking. Big deal. Learning to tell flowers apart is like the main business of being a bee.
That is his job.
Of course they're going to toss a couple 100,000 neurons at something important like that. But what about if things get a bit more complicated? See this puck? Well, in the middle of this puck, there's a divot with some sugar juice in it.
Okay.
And bees, they love the sugar juice. Now, of course, if you put a cap over top that sugar juice, you get some bummed-out bees.
Right, because they can smell the sugar. They want to get to it.
But if you take that cap and cover just a little bit of that food hole, and then each time the bee comes back, you cover it up a little bit more until it's totally covered, you get some bees that maybe complain on Yelp about the restaurant going to shit. But also bees that gradually figure out that you can push that cap out the way.
Wow.
And once you light that fire, some of them really get into the pushing. All right, Millie, you did it. You can stop now. Pretty clever, these bees. But if you train them on a different shape cap and then present them with both kinds of caps, they'll push the shape they were trained on first, regardless of which one is covering up the sugar hole. So they're learning, but they're not quite getting the full picture.
Right.
But pushing things out the way is pretty normal for a bee.
So real quick, this would have been more appropriately named the Bee Olympics. Or like Be Who You Can Be.
Okay.
Or like How Smart You Be. You know, there's like a lot of options we had. How did we get to bees and balls? There's not a single ball in this video.
We haven't made it there yet.
It's 2 minutes into this video. You let me down, you
There's
freak.
gotta be a little foreplay first. God.
I mean, we could go
Play the video.
A,
Stop.
B. Okay.
Flowers like that of the black locust don't just give up the pollen. You have to force it open.
Oh my God. Now, when I said there was all kind of fetishes here,
Damn, not that one.
I didn't know it was going to be so dark. And I apologize before if you came in here looking for, what is it called? People want to fuck animals. Zoo sex? You wanted that, and then instead got this.
Oh, God.
Doesn't involve pushing. Here you have some flowers, I'm doing air quotes. They've got a hole in the middle with sugar in it, and the whole thing is under a clear cover. But there's a string attached that you can pull to get at it.
To pull it
now,
out.
Give this setup to a bunch of bumblebees and not much happens. A lot of buzzing around. I mean, might be because the flowers look like crap. Didn't even draw petals on them.
They really didn't even try.
Scientists didn't have the balls to go to art school, but still. Anyway, you might find a rare bee, the 1 in 100 sort of thing, that can figure this thing out on the first go.
Wow.
But you know those kind of bees, getting drunk the night before the SATs sort of bees. But most of the rest of us, them, need a little help. But what you can do is train them by gradually pushing the flower under the cover, and that way they learn to pull on the string to get the juice.
Wow.
Not bad, right? And listen, once they learn it, they're champs at it.
Whose job is it to
You want to give
train
them a
bees?
job. But look at this. You take another bee that doesn't know how to do it. Put that bee in a box and let it watch the trained bee pull the string. Now let that bee out the box, and you know what? It friggin' learned by watching.
Wow.
Now the trained bee can still do some things that this one can't. Like if you add extra string so the flower doesn't move right away.
Right.
The trained bee keeps pulling until it works. The one who learned by watching just kind of gives up.
Damn.
So some things aren't getting across. But in this way, they can teach each other some very complex things. Here's a bee trained to do a 2-step puzzle where you only get the reward at the end. And again, another bee can learn just by watching. Looks like a bit of an annoying student.
He's following him
Gets
around.
Right up in there. Oh, now he's gone for a vape. All right, I'm back. Blue thing, red thing. Got it. I know what you're thinking. What about balls? Listen, what you've heard is true.
It's here. We finally made it to the ball part.
All right.
Okay, finally.
I know what you're
I was
thinking.
about to riot.
What about balls?
Yeah.
Listen, what you've heard is true. Bees love balls.
Yeah, I have heard
before
that.
I even show you stuff about how smart they are, you should know that bees really love balls.
Yeah.
If you make a clear path from a bee's nest to food, nothing in the way. But to get there, the bees have to walk past what is essentially a bee-sized Chuck E. Cheese ball pit.
Yeah.
They stop and they play with those friggin' balls. Not for some reward or anything like that. They play
They're
with
just
balls.
chilling.
So it's not surprising that you can train a bee to play 1 round of mini-golf. And look at how they train them, with the little bee puppet on a stick. And when they put the ball in the middle, they get a sugar snack. And they eventually get the hang of it.
That's
Look at this
so
one.
cute.
She throws it so hard she does a somersault. And she's like, come on, it hit the middle. Where's my sugar? Anyway, now you have the trained bee teach a novice bee how to put the ball in a hole.
Okay.
But this time you have 3 balls, and the 2 closest ones are glued down, so it has to use the farthest one. Now you let the novice bee try it on its own, and you don't glue down any of the balls. And you know what? It uses the ball that was closest to the middle.
Right.
The one that gets you the treat the fastest.
Wow.
Even though it was trained on a different ball. That's innovation.
That's
now
cool.
this allows knowledge to spread through an entire colony.
Imagine this being your job.
Yeah, playing with bees.
That would be so freaking cool.
Just recording bees, feeding bees with sugar.
Coming up with plans to torture/educate bees.
And when they fail, you just go, I guess I just can't do that one. Next. I would like to see the failed plans for
Right.
bees. He's like, yeah, I have this bee maze, and then there's just a lot of dead bees in there.
I want to know if these are the experiments that like made it in, right?
Yeah,
they
that's-
made it to
yeah.
the study.
Go ahead.
What are the ones where somebody shot them down? Like, that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Obviously, a bee can't do that.
Right.
Like,
He was like, I got a bee, I got a light switch, and I got a Pop-Tart. You're like, what is happening?
how many bees does it take to lift a baby?
This bee watches me punt the baby. It'll ram its head to the side of babies for a long time.
I didn't say anything about punting.
But I'm saying you could train them to hate babies.
Colony. Bees teaching other bees. That's what this shows, how that string pulling skill from before went from A to B to B to B.
Ah. A to B to B to B. You get it? Because they're all bees.
you make the jokes unenjoyable. Please stop.
Somebody commented on one of your videos. It was like, skins the time to think a joke is funny after it's been explained. And I was like,
Oh God. What's with the violence, bro? Relax. And that's messed up, dog.
And I was like,
it's true.
yeah.
It's true.
I think the explaining of a joke makes it so much funny.
Yeah. My wife hates stand-up. And she doesn't like stand-up because they don't explain the joke.
Oh, my God.
But that's also why she likes Bill Burr, because he will tell you why that shit's funny.
It makes sense that bees can share knowledge. I mean, bees are social butterflies. Well, I mean, they're bees, but
Right.
they all live together and they have to have some complicated roommate meetings, like who's going to get the groceries, or in this example, how to choose the location of a new home.
And this is where they stop being cute to me.
Right.
The individual bees, a couple bees, that was this is horrifying.
You know what it is? I can hear the buzzing. I can hear the sound of all the bees buzzing together.
My feet are like getting tingly. I'm so uncomfortable.
Can you feel them like shaking and stuff? Like single bee, cute, fine, no problem.
And bumblebees, adorable.
Oh yeah,
little fat stupid
goofy,
idiot.
yeah,
fucking...
they could barely fly. Like, bro, who built you like this? A bunch of honeybees is horrifying.
It's bad.
Now, out of 10,000 bees or so, only a couple hundred of them are the scouts. And the scouts go off and look for a good location, maybe a nice hole. Now, if they find something, they come back with directions. But they don't blab about it. They do it through interpretive dance. It's like if a mime had to give directions to the porta potty at Coachella. Here's how it works. They do this sort of figure eight thing, right? And when they go through the center, they shake their ass. This already packs in a bunch of info. It's like the Morse code of twerking. The direction they move in while they shake it corresponds to the direction of the location. Check it out. They're doing this on a vertical surface. The up direction means straight towards the sun. Down is away from the sun. So this direction here is like 5 o'clock away from the sun. Now the distance to the location is how long they shake it. It's roughly 1,000 meters for every second of shaking.
What?
Apparently they bought into the metric system.
Damn.
Bullshit. Now you might be thinking, how the hell do these bees know how far they flew?
Right.
Well, at one point they thought the bees were measuring the energy that they used to get there. So they put tiny weights on the bees to see if it changed their estimates. And you know what? It mainly proved you shouldn't put weights on bees. Now there's a bunch of bees with muscular calves walking around. Another time, they put these tents up as landmarks on the way from a hive to a feeder.
Okay.
And then they changed the number of landmarks, which seemed to confuse some of the bees.
Oh.
So what now? Bees can count? Well, it seems they can, especially lower numbers.
Wow.
Here's one avoiding 4 and landing on 2. Here's one they taught to tell the difference between 11 and 12. You can give them 2 scenarios and train them to pick the larger one or the smaller one in this scenario.
What?
Bees can count? Are you serious? Now, recognizing landmarks, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that.
I mean, if you have eyes, that makes sense as a thing to be able to do.
Yeah, but counting.
Yeah.
I never knew how they could. I thought they were just like, hey, here's the direction of a flower. I bought it that they could do that.
Yeah.
I figured the rest of them just kind of fucking guessed.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's in that general area kind
also,
of a thing.
pheromones, I've always kind of just assumed they were like they just left a trail of little bee pheromones.
And see, that's messed up because that's them tricking us in science because they don't know what happened either. So they just made shit up and told us. You know how few explanations pheromones are for things?
Right.
It's literally just like mood. That's it.
Yeah.
Am I mad? Am I horny? Am I sad? Pheromones. That's the start and the end. Nothing else uses pheromones.
Right.
You know? I shouldn't be here. I'm scared. Like the music changing in Dragon's Dogma. You shouldn't be somewhere, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but counting. Holy hell, man. That's cool.
Here's one they taught to tell the difference between 11 and 12.
Wow.
You can give them 2 scenarios and train them to pick the larger one or the smaller one in this scenario. Look at it go back and forth just to be sure. Perfectionist bee. And if you train it on picking the larger number, it won't just pick the one with more shapes. It'll also pick one with the same number of shapes, but where the shapes themselves are bigger. It's like the concept of larger. And look at this. If you train them to pick the smaller thing, they recognize that nothing is smaller than something. And that's the concept of 0. In this one, if the bee sees yellow shapes, it's trained to go inside and look for the panel with 1 less than the number of shapes outside. Friggin' subtraction. If the color of the shapes is blue, the bee knows to add 1 to the number.
What?
And they can do math. You probably only knew about their spelling. Kill me. But discrete counting doesn't seem to be the thing that helps them judge distances. Instead, they seem to use something called optical flow, which is kind of like the rate that things go.
Optical
Instead,
flow.
They seem to
So it's just like a bonus. Like he's like, they can count That also has nothing to do with how they can
that's
find
not
things.
what we were talking
They
about
just can
here.
also do that.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
I hate looking at this. I don't
I'm
like
sorry.
the holes.
Yeah.
Called optical flow,
Yeah.
which is kind of like the rate that things go by in your visual field. And if you know that this is how bees measure things,
This is how my husband sees without glasses.
That's exactly what it's like. People are like, how can you see where you're going? Well, baby, I know what cars look like, kinda.
What?
Never mind.
Okay.
It's funny though.
No. Say it off camera.
I can also see through feel. It's good.
Say it.
I was just saying, like, I can also see through feel. It's like a combination of both. Makes me really good at sex. I could use my as kind of like one of those things they use to find water in the ground. Hits every time. It's like an antenna.
God. What does that have to do with bees?
When they play with balls, I got balls. Same thing.
and if you know that this is how bees measure things, you can kind of screw with them. You put them in a tunnel, for example, with
Okay.
stripes on the floor. As it passes over the stripes, it measures the distance and has an appropriate ass shaking. Now you do the same thing, except in this one, the stripes are moving. So as the bee flies, it thinks it's covering a hell of a lot more ground. And it tells its buddies about a location that's miles away.
Dang.
Meanwhile, you put a horizontal stripe and nothing changes while you fly over it. They don't know how far they
That's
went.
so fun.
And this explains, by the way, why bees will often drown if they fly over still water. You can see this effect by using a mirror, too. The bee keeps getting closer to the ground to try and discern some movement. But all there is a reflection of a stationary bee.
Right.
So you can see it keeps bunking into the ground. Anyway, in addition to distance and direction, there's one more thing that seems to be communicated
What?
in this dance. The bee's estimate of how good the location is that it's found seems to be related to how often it does the dance in a row. If it thinks it's found something great, it just keeps going. And then there's bees like this one that don't seem very enthused. It flew like 3 feet and found a shoe. Now, the reason for
He's
going
so
on
mad.
and on about a good location
That's
is because
bullshit.
the bees eventually have to pick one location for their new home.
Yeah.
So these dances aren't just about the directions, it's about marketing. If you found a good location, you try and convince other scouts to check it out, and then dance like you do until there's enough to make the decision.
Wow.
And listen, since you've stayed around this long, I'll tell you one other thing.
What?
All of this communication about distance and location and quality mainly happen inside a hive, in the dark. Mic drop.
What?
A tiny little bee mic drop. You think the bee, you
Wow.
lost the honey? No, 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 bees love bones. Can't tempt to be with your money. No, 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 bees love bones.
What do you say? Special
Oh,
thanks
no,
to Jake
no,
and the controller. Xbox controller joke. Oh, okay. For the
That's-
spelling bee joke.
That's so
That's cute.
funny.
That's
also,
so
who
cute.
knew ZeFrank
Mm-hmm.
could sing?
If you want to be serenaded by a horny animal enthusiast, Frank's channel is for you. There's a anime about a guy
Who fucks a bee?
who is, oh my god, he's living with like a snake girl,
Okay.
and then he meets other snake girls.
And then,
That's the anime.
yeah.
I'm assuming that audience and this audience are the same people.
Okay.
That to me is the safe assumption. We'll see you guys in the next one. If you want any more questionable bee facts, hit me up. I got a ton. Love?
I had a great time, and
Yeah.
we didn't have to see too much gross stuff. So I was really happy about that. We
You
only
got
saw
it
a
in.
little bit of the bee
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and I
Yeah.
don't like that stuff, and there was barely any of that stuff.
There was no bee excretion in the whole video, and I'm really proud of him for that.
You did a good job.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.